I really felt like I needed a stronghold to come back to, like an anchor of, no, this is a practice, this is a process, this is something that you have to keep going back to. It's not just a push a button and you're done.
Welcome to a Friday Night Live here on Instagram. I am so excited to be here a couple of times this week. And the reason why I'm here at this hour of the evening Eastern time in Toronto is because I have the joy of having a dear friend on who is down in the land of Oz. My Aussie friend. I'm going to introduce you to her. And actually, before I do, I want to just grab her book. I didn't get it before going live. It is, oh my goodness. Here it is. I found it. Okay, so I'm so excited. Hello everyone joining. So this wonderful human being is Danielle Brooker, and she wrote a wonderful book called Freedom from Busy. And it's been such a journey for her writing this book, and so fun for me to be on the journey with her as she wrote it. She is a joy coach, and she's working a lot in helping mothers activate more pleasure, play, all the good things as they're holding things together and living forward into their dreams. And she is joining me here now. Oh, let's see. Oh, okay. So we're just going to have her come on. There she is. And it's been such a beautiful experience. And actually, if you've been listening to the Connect with Sheila Botelho podcast, Danielle Brooker was one of my first guests to ever be on. Here we go. Oh, hey, everybody. So good to see you. So we're going to just let her come on live. And here she is, the joy coach extraordinaire, Danielle Brooker.
Oh my gosh. What a joy to be here with you, darling. I've momentarily lost your video, so just let me know if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Great.
Can you see me now too?
No, but I'm just assuming you're going to kick in and that my system is just like warming up for the day.
It's all good. It's Saturday there, right? What time is it where you are right now?
So it's like a very reasonable 11 a.m. So like, I know that we were back and forth trying to figure out, like, how do we do this and what time of day, and, you know, but we've got it. We're
here. Yay. Well, it's so great. And I know I speak to people all over the world in the various things that I do in the land of self-care and business development and wellness. And what is so cool is knowing there's always a good time to have a live conversation. And it's what a lot of people are starving for. I mean, I love my self-led programs in my self-care app. Fabulous. There's something about connecting live. Right? You just can't replace it. And so, Danielle, you were one of my first guests on the Connect with Sheila Botelho podcast way back in the day. And I know you have your podcast, and we're going to share about all the things that you're doing. And since we've spoken, you became a mama.
Oh my gosh.
And so,
I mean, just like that.
Just like that. It just happened. It was not a straight line, though, was it? Because it happened at an interesting time. So maybe bring us all up to speed for those people listening who may have heard your initial conversation. So you were living in the UK, and now you're a mama down in Australia.
I know, right? So first of all, like, I'm just so grateful to like have these conversations with you. I remember our first conversation on the Connect podcast, and it's just been such a joy and pleasure to watch the growth and expansion of all of the conversations that you have. And that's why I was so excited to come and have this chat with you today. A, because we haven't caught up in ages. So everyone, this is a live catch-up call. But B, because you are someone who really lives and breathes like that simplicity of your title of your podcast, Connect. And I so agree with you about that live connection time. And it's something that I've possibly lacked actually in the last few years, if I catch you all up. So our conversation was, I was living in, like when we first chatted on your podcast, I was living in London, UK, and I am now based in Sydney, Australia. And in that time, I really, the timeline is all morphed. I made the decision with my partner to essentially move back to Australia in the midst of, the craziness that was the world, 2.5 years ago. And we came to Australia, and 3 months later birthed my daughter at home. And so I sort of say, like, we made this crazy decision to move countries and, birth our first daughter in the midst of a global pandemic, just, for the fun of it. Why not throw a challenge out there, and why not really test this theory of really living and breathing into your joy and leaning on those tools, right? Whether or not I was conscious of it at the time, I don't know. So, so right now I have a toddler, and my work has really, I guess, expanded a lot. I was working in the world of joy coaching, is what I called it, and I feel like this journey into motherhood has essentially amplified my own personal learnings, really asked me to step up and relearn some of the lessons, particularly when I take that lens of the Freedom from Busy book as well. And I am just living and breathing and, being in amongst it all right now.
Yeah, it's what an interesting experience. And I know it was a fun experience of you going from Australia to all the other places you lived to land in the UK. And so everyone, I will link our initial conversation.
Yeah.
So you can hear Danielle's story, what brought her into her work, because it is really, really incredible, really, where you started in the corporate land of numbers, business, which is the Lego movie, if anyone who has kids would know that. And now are in a completely different type of work, and also a completely different living situation, being a mama. And what I love about you, Danielle, is that no matter where you've been at in this journey, you have been connected with people using your learnings to help elevate other people's lives. You have brought them along the journey and also taught them from your own lived experience tools that can really help them live with more joy. And we resonated right from the get-go when we met up. And it was very much around this whole idea of being able to hold joy even while there's challenges and chaos and sorrow. And it's interesting because I can point to so many different times since we've met where there has been just that dichotomy. And it's always going to be that way. There's always going to be world events in your own personal life, in your community, that can just tear your heart right out. And simultaneously, there is the beauty and the joy and the laughter. Yeah. And so your work is so needed, especially now, because we need to be reminded that it's okay to hold joy even during times of difficulty. If anything, isn't that what keeps us going?
Yeah, I mean, I would almost say it's the times of difficulties that we need the joy more, which is why I often, use this, this sentence that I say over and over again, which is that joy is not just a nice to have, it's a necessity. And a lot of the clients that I work with, that's the work we're doing, because in the kind of, quote marks good times, or, the times that we have more energy, more capacity, like it almost feels like joy comes easier. Like, oh yeah, sure, I'll put on a dance track and I'll dance around my living room, or I'll go do that yoga class because it's so exciting and it brings me joy. And I know that I need to tap into my joy practices. And, this ties a lot into your self-care work as well. But actually, when we need that hit more, when we need that energy, when we need that capacity more, are the harder times, the times when you have completely bottomed out, when you have zero energy, when you have no capacity, maybe when you're away from support networks, or you have done some like massive transition, you've changed careers, you've birthed a baby, you've moved countries, you're going through menopause, like whatever your version of that is. I believe that if you don't if you haven't got the muscle strength around joy, those times are going to be even trickier, right? And I think we talked a lot about this when you came on my podcast, Sheila. We talked, almost about this process of grief, that we think, that what's the way to describe it? We think it's either like we're either really great and like energized and joyful, and joy's all about happiness, or like we're going through a really hard time and it's challenging and there's sorrow and hardship. But actually, a lot of the work that I share is much more about that, leaning into the emotional scale, like being okay with all of the emotions. Like that's really what I'm teaching. And I think I really want to make that clear from the get-go, that joy is not just something that comes easily. Joy is not just finding happy things to do. Joy is not just, buying yourself that bunch of flowers. Joy is deep work that must be done. And I kind of want to bring lightness to that, because now I'm thinking, oh, geez, that sounded really, really heavy and hard. But I believe that's why we've connected as well, is because that's what your self-care work is about as well. Like it's like really tuning into the uniqueness of who you are and what you need, instead of just like going with the flow of whatever's around you. Does that make sense?
Absolute sense. Yes. Yeah. It's accessing your version of pleasure and play, and what does joy look like to you. So no one has met my husband yet in this online space, unless they're people who know me. He's like, loves me off on his own, not in internet world. And so he has an Instagram account, but like he doesn't have a picture up. Or no, maybe it's a picture of us together. Yes, so there is a picture. It's private. He follows like family, and his level of joy is working with his hands, is just time together in quiet, which is why I have a podcast, so I can share all my things and not just constantly nonstop to handle. Oh my goodness. Right? My kids love it too, the fact that I have an outlet. And so he accesses joy in such a different way. Yeah. And we all do. And it's perfect for each of us. And my invitation for people, when I'm, working on self-care strategy, when I'm looking at really leaders in business, leaders of organizations are only, their organization is only as healthy and successful and, all of those things dependent on really the health of the leader and the leadership team, right? And the way we get there, it's not just about balance. Like balance is kind of, I love a harmony kind of combination instead, but it is about inviting in more pleasure and play into your life outside of work and inside of work, and knowing that we can do that. We can be successful in an organization and in our home life when we access more pleasure and play, because guess what? It opens up creativity. It solves problems. It takes us out of the tunnel vision. Like there's so much to it. So yeah, very well said. I think it's, joy can be mistaken for, like you say, just all the happy, bubbly things. But joy, I believe it can be like a very grounded feeling. It's like the feeling I get when I'm walking. It's spring where you are. It's fall where I am, walking amongst the fallen leaves and crunching through there, and the sun's shining through, and I'm just like, oh, look at that. And it's grounded, and that's joy. That's an element of joy for me. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. And so I'd love for you to share, how has your work really shifted since motherhood? Like going from, okay, you can just every day, you could just do whatever you feel like in terms of this is the schedule, I'm going to shift it. You're working for yourself, and you're going to the coffee shop, and you're having that beautiful cappuccino with I don't know what you have, but it's so lovely. With a little biscotti. And I love that you've not given that up during motherhood. Like you bring her along now with you.
Yeah.
But how have things shifted?
So, you know what? It's such a fascinating question, and one that I'm not going to do justice to in this live. So these are just kind of highlights coming through, and believe me, there are multiple books in me, or at least an updated version of Freedom from Busy, right? Because that really is probably the theme I'll give it. Is it's still this everything I wrote in Freedom from Busy is exactly what I'm experiencing right now. It's this different version of it, and it's understanding how our own personal patterns of busyness might kind of show up and trip us up, I guess. So for me in motherhood, the obvious stuff, like the surface level stuff for me is the access to alone time, right? And I think that's quite an obvious thing as well, particularly in those first few years, or those kind of in the thick of it years. I've been referring to it because you are on a lot. There's a level of, quote marks again, busyness that starts to take over. There are more duties, there are more things that you need to be on for, and there's this call for you to also at the same time be super present with your little person, right? And so for me, what shifted and changed is actually if it is even possible, because I think of myself as the most unbusy. No, I'm busy. I'm pretty buzzy.
In the best way ever.
Busy person, or this, I consider myself a very slow person. It's a strategy that I've applied to my life that works really well for me. And if anything, in some weird way, motherhood has actually brought that on even more. And the interesting lesson through that has been that I thought that I would welcome it, and I thought that I would just expand and soften even more, and I would want it, because that is what my body and my system loves, is that level of slowness, that level of presence, that level of really being in that learning, in that journey, in that moment. But what's been really interesting for me is that those busyness lessons that I write about in the book, and those patterns, they've actually heightened, they've exemplified, they've been like in my face more, and I've noticed myself wanting to be busy in a not necessarily a resourceful way, though. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? So it's almost like that experience of relearning lessons at a different level, at a different capacity point. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I'm only half answering your question, so pull me up if I'm missing a few things. I've only had 1.5 coffees today, so maybe I needed a full second coffee, Sheila.
No, I love that you've shared this piece that you actually desire a little bit more busyness. And the thing is, but it's like, and maybe that stimulation of, because you're spending so much time with this little person who's fabulous, it is the stimulation of other things that maybe is knocking at the door. But you have a word that you use, like activation, that you're helping people with. And it's like to activate. It is like, that's a beautiful, energetic word. Yeah. And it's like, maybe speak to me about what that activation is, and what are you helping the mamas in your world do to be activated?
Yeah. And I use that word on purpose, because it's an on purpose word. It's a word that you have to be conscious for. You have to be active for, like the word is within the word, right? Mm-hmm. So when I was talking about getting that pull of busyness again, I've really had to check myself around, like, am I wanting to be busy to numb from some feelings and some hard things? Like, being super on and super present for a little person is a lot. It's also, this is the dichotomy. It's also incredible. It's also joyful. It's also like giving me all of the expansion. But I've had to really check myself, like, how much of this am I just falling into busyness patterns, or wanting to do things the way other people have done things, instead of tuning into what's unique and right for me and my soul. So the word activation is on purpose, because I talk to so many clients, and even before the motherhood journey, clients who were looking to conceive their first child, for example, and still trapped in that busy cycle of career and achievement and burnout and stress, and trying to kind of make that transition. So now I talk about the activation, because a lot of the conversations in motherhood do tend to be around, how tired you are, how busy you are, how, how much support you need. Like, it tends to be those topics that you always hear. And I found myself wanting to talk about, like, I want to talk about how cute my little person is, or what, like, cool new word she said today, or how I was tired in the middle of the night, but then she looked at me and did something silly and I burst out laughing. Like, I really found myself craving those conversations and I wasn't getting them. And what that told me was, like, we very quickly, our mindset goes into a pattern of needing to talk about, this is, just to be super clear, this is not about toxic positivity. What I'm about to say is not about just brushing over all the hard stuff and pretending everything's okay. Like, there is a much deeper conversation to be had on that. So, but what I was finding is that everything was gravitating towards heaviness. Yeah. Everything was gravitating towards, like, oh, this is hard. And like, we were getting stuck in that energy. And I really was paying attention to myself, because I find myself, I am someone who, you know, what I used to feel about myself is that I was someone who was very in tune with who I am as a person, very confident in standing up for how I want to do things in life, very okay with picking the things that bring me joy, even if they weren't bringing, you know, traditional ways of bringing other people joy. And I found myself letting go of a lot of that. Like, I'd lost my ground a little bit. And so the activation word I started to use, because I was thinking, this is no longer just me saying, tune into my joy and practice it and build the strength and the muscle. This has become actually about, like, activating it. And like, literally in a tough moment or a heavy moment or even a light moment, like even just a happy day, being able to be like, and let's activate it. Let's really be okay with expanding more. And I think for me, that's definitely what motherhood continues to show me and teach me, is like this capacity to keep expanding. You know, I've heard, and you might be able to speak more to this, having, you know, just a few more years experience in motherhood than me, with multiple children, is that, you know, you think, oh my God, this is just like, you know, the early weeks and months of my little person's life, I was like, oh my God, this is overwhelming. The amount of love that I feel for her, the amount of, you know, pleasure and joy I'm experiencing daily. And I was like, there was like this torrent of love from the people in our life as well. Like, I almost couldn't hold how much people are already credible to me. And it also taught me more about my own, like, physical body and mind and, you know, soul's capacity to receive love, to receive joy. And so I started to refer to it as activation, because if we're not in a practice of being able to actually access what's available to us, because we're putting all the blocks up, the busyness, the stress, the conversations about tiredness and, you know, sleep patterns and things, like, I really felt like I needed a stronghold to come back to, like, an anchor of, no, this is a practice, this is a process, this is something that you have to keep going back to. It's not just a push a button and you're done.
Yes, it is so true. There is that feeling, especially if, you know, your little one is the first little one for a long time in your sphere, which was the case for our first one. And there's so many, like, beautiful connection points we have, because both my boys were home water births. And I remember that feeling, that overwhelming, like you say, like, you can't even believe how much love is. You thought that you knew how much you love your little one, but all of a sudden it's just like, how can I even hold this? This is amazing. And to the point where then my second, I was like, how am I going to be able to keep loving my first one as much as I do and still have enough space? And then you realize, hey, it's a math thing. It's exponential. You can hold so much love, that so much more than you could even imagine. And then there's how can I actually be present for both? And that is amazing, what is possible. And so, yeah, it really does grow and change. And mine are now 15 and 17. And it's a different level. It's like every age and stage. Anytime I meet someone with either an infant, or like a toddler, and like all through the phases, you know, bumping into people when I'm out and about, and I'm like, oh, I remember that age. And it was awesome. And it just keeps getting better as we are really putting the joy and presence as a practice in our home life and in our relationship with our kids, and in, yes, acknowledging the hard stuff, because yes, parenting is hard, right? Really.
And
we're reparenting ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of feel like I might have brushed over that piece when talking about the word activation, Sheila. So I just want to make it clear, like my own personal experience, like I am like crying on the bathroom floor or bawling my eyes out because my little person is bawling her eyes out, or she's in pain over something and I can't hold it together and I'm crying as well because I'm like, well, like, how do I hold that and hold it for myself? And I'm falling apart and I'm like having the biggest arguments with my partner, whom I love dearly, and we have a very conscious relationship than I have ever had in, you know, so the emotional intensity is like exponential as well. And I just wanted to give like some snippets of that, because that's, for me, that's why the piece around joy activation is even more critical, because it is that it's both. And in my, you know, even before birthing my own child and working with clients on that journey, in my kind of joy coaching sphere, that is what I would talk about, is that Brene Brown has this incredible quote around, and I'm going to, you know, apologies, Brene, I'm going to do my best to remember the precise words, but essentially she says that you cannot numb your pain without numbing your joy. Like where your emotions are fired off in your brain, like if you're numbing pain, you are numbing joy. Does that make sense? So like you have to experience both. So therefore it goes without saying that the more you expand to experience joy, the more that feeling of pain might be present in your life as well. And that's okay. And I feel like we really touched on that in our conversation on my podcast, you know, when we're exploring that topic of grief, because it's both. You can have both, and you can have them, you know, relatively in the same experience. And that's what's kind of catching me by surprise, I guess, in the motherhood journey.
Oh yeah, it is. And sometimes it's hour over the hour. Like you're right at the roller coaster
right.
together, right? And everyone watching, everyone listening can remember a time, right? This is called being human, right? Yeah. And it is very much a practice of just having a whole lot of grace on ourselves through all of it, and trying to really be present in that and accepting of where we're at. It's like feeling it, really feeling into it, and then moving through it.
Yeah.
And it's something I try and coach myself on, as well as anyone else in my world, including my kiddos. It's like, hey, it's okay that you're feeling this way, that you're upset about something, that you're frustrated. Feel it, and then allow yourself to move through it. Because when you really honor it, see it, feel it, you can move through it, because these are like feelings that sometimes will maybe last moments, you know, and sometimes they may come and go, but we need to acknowledge it, see it for what it is, to be able to move through it. I love how you articulated that, Danielle. And so now, and of course you have the Let It Shine podcast, you have Freedom from Busy, the book, you have some containers or several ways people can work with you right now. I'd love for you to share, like, what is the work that's lighting you up, where people can connect with you to really activate more of that joy in a really tangible way in their life and work.
So, I mean, I honestly, I just love my one-to-one containers, because when you get to hold that space, you know, for yourself, like, because that's really what it is when you sign up for a one-to-one coaching, is like you're putting your hand up and saying, I'm ready, I'm holding this for myself. And really the coach is there just to be there for the ride and a little bit of guidance here and there. But for me, it's so powerful, because we get to really uncover some of those deeper layers, those deeper patterns that keep tripping you up. And I've got some, you know, cool new ways that I'm doing that. Like I'm playing around with things like pocket coaching, where we just do voice note coaching back and forth, because you're a busy mama, you know, like you're on the go. Like, how can we still give you that space and time and, you know, freedom, even in amongst your logistics? And the thing that I'm really excited about right now, which I'm sharing with the Sheila Botelho community for the first time, well, I'm actually sharing with the whole online space for this time, is I've got a really cool new podcast on the way, essentially like a relaunch. Let It Shine has had a little bit of a hibernation whilst I've been, you know, moving countries, birthing babies. And I'm really excited for the next iteration of that. So there's nothing public yet. The best way to just, be the first to know or be there ready for the intro episode and things like that is to, connect with me here on Instagram, send me a DM or jump onto my website, which at the moment is thedaisypatch.co.uk/weekly, and just get my newsletters, because I love writing. I love sharing from the heart. I love saying it as it is. And that's where I do it. So
That's great. I love it. I'm excited. Nothing like a rebrand. And, we are constantly evolving. And so it only makes sense that the way we serve, the way we work, the way we show up to work with people is going to shift over time. And we all get to do that. We get to, even people who are not business owners, you get to rebrand. You get to rewrite contracts in your life. I'm having conversations even now with my husband about just different things as some things in our life have shifted with people being certain places at certain times. And it's like, okay, what feels good now? Because we've been married 27 years. So some stuff's going to change. And so it's okay. And so as long as we're open to being, if we're open to being open to shifting and changing, that's great. I always say to my guys too, they're at this point, they're very focused on their interests and things, not really so interested in relationships at this point. But I'm like, whatever the case, just make sure that whoever long-term you want to be with down the road, that they have a growth mindset, that they just are committed to growing because you are. And that's so key. And that's been very important in my relationship as well. So I'm really grateful that we could be here together tonight, and with all of our evening or early morning down under people visiting. It's been so great. And I really invite everyone to go, and I will eventually have things under this for links and things like that of where you can find past episodes. But definitely for now, go follow Danielle and make sure that you get on her email list so you can hear about this beautiful new podcast offering and other ways that you can work with her. I'm just thrilled that we got to be here together.
Thank you. So wonderful to see you again, my darling. I enjoyed our live catch up.
Yeah, I know. Oh, right. And we can have another catch up.
This is just how we talk.
As well. We just thought, hey, this is a really great, let's do this, because I'm seeing all these cool things that you have going on. I'm like, we just need to share this with people. Why wait? Right. So have a lovely rest of your Saturday, and everyone else enjoy the day wherever and whatever time it is, and stay tuned for what's next. Bye, everybody.